Okay.
Okay, Nicki, well, just let's dive into these questions. So, what inspired you to start practicing yoga, and how has your practice evolved since then?
Okay. Curiosity. I was at college in London and came back for a holiday and noticed that my old school was advertising evening classes for yoga, and was just curious and went along and absolutely loved the physical exercises first of all, and then when at the end she got us to lie down for relaxation, oh my goodness, the rest that I felt, real deep rest, was absolutely incredible. And afterwards I just felt so light, peaceful, and thought, oh my goodness, this isn't just an exercise class, this is something more. So I kept going. When I finished college, I couldn't get a job. It was a really bad time, sort of early 80s, when there were lots of strikes here, a lot of problems with work. And I must have applied for over 70 jobs and ended up getting a job back home, having to come back and live with my parents, which was really hard, because once you've been independent, to come back and live under your parents' roof isn't easy. So it was sort of a respite from being under sort of a parental roof again, going to this class and being able to find real peace. And then the breathing, I just loved the breathing. And then she talked a little bit about the history and the energy system, the chakras, and I just found it so fascinating, and thought, this is whole body, mind, soul, spirit, whatever. And continued to absolutely love the classes, until I got married and then moved. And then it was, oh my goodness, and the teacher moved. So then it was, oh my goodness, I need to find another class. Found another class, but it wasn't the same. And I actually hurt myself in that class and thought, okay. So then this teacher actually encouraged me to do teacher training, and we have an organisation called the British Wheel of Yoga here. I don't know if you've heard of it. So I decided that, okay, because I was so interested and I didn't seem to be able to gain any more information and insight into the history of yoga and how it came about and how everything sort of fitted together, the body, the breathing, the relaxation stroke meditation. I took the teacher training course and qualified to become a teacher. And during that teacher training course, was actually introduced to lots of different styles of yoga. And I found a book called Breath by a lady called Sandra Sabatini, who I discovered had studied with Vanda Scaravelli. And just the words in this book about breathing, about lying on the ground, were just so profound and really spoke to me in a deep way. And I could feel my body was actually, it was feeling things as I was reading the words. And it had some of the postures in it, but the way that it was putting words, I had no idea how to recreate that in my body, but realized that this was probably a way of being able to do postures without hurting myself, and also forcing and straining, because I also realized that when I was doing my teacher training, the way we're being told to make shapes, breathe in, bend, do this, do that, although yes, and I'm quite a competitive person. I've raced and done lots of different sports and wanted to win, and so I'm conscious that I do push and strive to sort of get better at something, but realize that this feeling that I was having was that this was a better way to go, but how did I find how to go that way? And it was after the teacher training, we had guest tutors that came in, and this one guest tutor was going to be teaching to do pregnancy yoga. And a friend of mine that did the same course with me said, how about us doing the pregnancy training together? Because it will add another bow to our skills. But at that stage, I was also quite interested in pregnancy because I'd already had my 2 children, couldn't go to a yoga class then, and just sort of did things on my own. And the one thing that I felt that really helped me through my pregnancy and afterwards when I had the children was the relaxation. And I had some relaxation cassette tapes. Remember the old cassette tapes?
I do.
And when my husband came home from work about 6 o'clock, I used to hand the baby over to him and just head upstairs, lie on my bed and listen to this cassette tape. And I had the most amazing experience during this relaxation that I was looking down on my body. I'd gone through this relaxation thing, and all of a sudden I just thought, oh my goodness, I'm not actually in my body anymore. I'm looking, and it was, I was on the ceiling looking down at my body. And I just thought, wow, this yoga is really powerful stuff. You know? I've digressed a bit. So I decided I would do this pregnancy yoga training. And it just so happened that Louise Simmons was the other tutor on this pregnancy yoga course.
Oh,
I know. Isn't that amazing? And she taught, and she was teaching the posture work. And I remember her making me stand and grabbing hold of my calf muscles and shoving me around and talking all this gobbledygook to me that I couldn't understand. My body was just so tight and so tense, but there was little things that were changing a little bit inside of me. And I just thought, oh, wow, I really don't understand this, but something different is happening. And I can feel there's some changes happening. Finished the course, came back home, and there were no Scaravelli teachers around then. Apart from, I found a lady in Bristol who had connections with Diane and with Sophie Hall. And so I ended up going to some days with Diane and Sophie. And I can remember this one workshop I went to where Diane just took hold of one part of my body. I think it was my hand. She was getting me to move my hand around, put the outside edge of my hand around. She was playing with this part of my hand, and all of a sudden she put this edge of my hand down on the ground, and my fingers just did this strange spreading action, and all this strange feeling went up through my arm. It was magic. And I just thought, oh wow. And so I was trying to sort of practice on my own. I managed to get to some workshops with Sophie, who taught sort of in the Southwest a couple of times with teachers. And each time I just sort of thought, my body feels that it wants this. And I was watching other students that obviously worked with her for a long time in the ease that they were having going into postures, thinking, I wish I could find that for myself. Some things were changing. But I couldn't sort of get any regular contact with teachers. So I sort of persevered. I sort of changed. I used to visit teachers in Southampton, which is sort of a little bit further south than me, that had Sophie. I ended up going over to Italy for a week and studying with Diane and writing notes down, copious notes. Sort of, I remember writing in a notebook. She put my hand on my pubic bone and pushed my pubic bone down. She told me I got 2 holes in the back of, and it sounded rubbish, 2 holes in the back of my head, something around my tailbone, but there was just all these magical things happening up through my spine. It was like a massage going on, you know. And I just thought, oh my goodness, it feels so wonderful. But I was still not very confident in how to apply that in my own practice, really, but sort of getting glimpses of it and feeling the changes in my body. And then I suppose I went back to work. I worked in a school for a while with some very difficult children that have been excluded from school for drugs and alcohol, and most of them were involved with the police. So it was quite a harrowing job. So I just continued to quietly practice a little bit at home, and the breathing and the relaxation were the things that sort of got me through that time. And yeah, and I sort of did that for quite a long while. I was teaching a few classes and I was teaching too many. I was wearing myself out. And actually my body told me that's enough, and I became ill. So I stopped and reduced the classes and thought, you need to spend time on yourself a little bit more. And so we went off to Greece for a couple of weeks, and I just played around with the notes I'd had from Diane, with Vanda Scaravelli's book, and with this breath book by Sandra Sabatini. And that was just so nourishing. I felt really, and because we were in the warmth of the sun as well, that was wonderful. That was really lovely. And I came back quite refreshed, and then made the mistake of deciding that I would work and up my classes again. And so I got back into this cycle of wearing myself down again. And then I think I got up to the point where we'd moved my parents in near to us because my dad's health was failing. And we got towards COVID. I found you, thankfully. And I can't remember whether I found you while my dad was ill or after my dad died, but we had a horrendous family time where my son's 7-year relationship with his girlfriend, who they got engaged, they were living here saving up to buy a house, and all of a sudden she decided she didn't want to be with him anymore, and he was awful. He was suicidal. I remember having to phone the Samaritans, which is a help group for people that don't want to live anymore. And I was suffering badly with kidney stones then. My husband didn't cope very well with my son being in that state, didn't know what to do, how to help him. And so I felt a lot of pressure on myself. My dad was beginning to fall in the night, and because they live in the next street, we were being called, and we were having to go around in the middle of the night and getting back up and getting him into bed. And we realised that he probably didn't have very long. I ended up going into hospital, and them and because it was COVID, they wouldn't take out the kidney stones, but they put some sort of stent up through my ureter into the kidney and coiled it around a stone to hold it in place. But my body is so sensitive, I found it difficult to walk afterwards. I could not walk a few yards around to my mum and dad's to check how they were. I had to drive around in the car. And my son was still howling in the house and not eating and wanting to end his life. And I was just in a place where I just thought, oh my goodness, that I really don't know what to do. But something told me, just keep breathing, just keep trying to relax. And having this really difficult conversation with my dad one day about, do you think you're coming to end of life, Dad? And him saying, yes, he did. And I mean, our doctor's surgery was brilliant. They put everything in place. And he died the day after we had that conversation. At home, I'd gone around, my daughter had come round with little Willow, and he died in front of me. and I hadn't seen anybody die, so that was a real shock. And we have to do first aid training with our teacher qualification here, so just automatically I went into CPR and everything. And we had a helicopter arrived to come and help him. And then this awful conversation with my mum, the ambulance people were saying, look, we could take him and work on him, but, you know, it won't be pretty. So, you know, I made mum, it's up to you, mum, your decision. What do we do? She said, no, let him go. And so I think it was sometime after that that I then ended up going into hospital and having the stent removed and the kidney stone taken out. And then gradually my son starting to get better, my mum starting to recover, but me with all this trauma attached to me. And then I think I found you.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
And that's when I thought I really need now to concentrate on myself. So because of COVID, everything stopped anyway, which was brilliant. It was, I know, you know how the cosmos works. It just all seemed to fall into place. Yeah, and that's when I found that just by being very regular with your classes, listening to what you were saying, that gradually I could start to feel my body was starting to respond even more quickly. And I don't know whether that's because it was just in such a vulnerable, open place, that it was starting to think, yeah, okay, you know, this, you listen to this is what is going to heal you. That gradually I can feel my body is changing.
It sure is.
And it's really changed. And I think it's only in this last probably 6 months when I now know my son has almost completely 100% healed from that trauma that he was under. I now, because I used to find that when I was on my hands and knees and going into down dog, it brought back memories of the CPR. There was still that trauma held within me. And still that need that I had to push against something, and that's starting to lessen. Oh, sorry, am I making you emotional?
No. Oh, no, yeah, this is incredible.
And I'm starting to now feel that you don't have to push against anything anymore. You can start to trust that the ground is there. Yeah, and I'm starting to feel, because I used to always, well, I still do get some sort of feeling around here, but I can feel that around my waist that's starting to change. There's starting to be more of a freedom around there. And that the feeling in my chest, I think, where everything of just, you've got to hold on, you've got to stay strong for everybody else that's around you. I'm starting to let go of that a bit more now.
Wow.
So that has been amazing, really amazing.
And could you speak to like this challenge or idea or concept that people might have that online yoga is boring or impersonal or ineffective? Because you're in the UK and I'm in Canada, and the only way that we've worked together is online, and I can see profound differences in your practice and your body, and we've never met in physical proximity. So could you talk to either your surprise or your delight, or I don't know, about how online yoga can be rich, effective, and intimate, despite maybe, I understand why people think it couldn't be, but what's been your experience?
Yeah, I've been surprised and delighted. I think there's something about you, Jill, your personality, the way that you are so open and caring about all of us. I think that really comes across. And in the group is just an amazing group of people. They are just all so friendly and so caring. That comes across as well. And I found that even when you're not personally talking to me, that some of what you say to other people, I can feel that in my body responds to that. And I know that I am sensitive. It's sometimes a curse, but sometimes it's actually lovely, because the things resonate within me. Some of the things that you say to other people, I can feel that for myself. How that works, I don't know, but there is, I think it is just a connection that goes across the ether through all these little internet thingies, across to you and the other people. And you know, that there are some people that I don't know so well, but there are people I can really connect to. Lynn and Heather, the other Linda, Margot, Elin. Yeah, I mean, there are just some people that you can, distance is no barrier to me. You can just feel people's sincerity, I think, and their caring.
I think we have
the fact that we've never met.
I know, it's crazy. And I do think we have a very special thing happening that grew out of COVID times organically. You know, it wasn't a plan, it wasn't contrived, it just unfolded out of necessity because all classes stopped here. And there already was some trust and intimacy built with a lot of those people. And I think them coming together and then additional people coming in just a very vulnerable kind of unknown time, that some magical connections and this commitment I think that people have to the group too helps the same people show up. We're not just dropping in, people aren't coming and going. There's a consistency and a commitment and a dedication to the practice within our community, and therefore there's some safety and capacity to be vulnerable and share and go deep within ourselves, because I think of this container, and it's not just me. I think it's everybody bringing their beautiful selves and continuing to show up. I think it's unique and it's really special, and I see you guys changing. And just to that point that you were saying, it's interesting because I'm watching you guys on a projector, and my eyes are focused just on one of you at a time, right? And I'm always watching, and I might catch somebody doing something, the foot, the elbow, the wrist, the shoulder, just noticing something that has the potential to be a little bit more connected or awake. And I would say that it doesn't matter who I'm looking at, probably, that as I point out this part of the body or this opportunity to notice something, we all get a reminder to pay attention to that. So it's interesting that even though I'm focused on one person, as you said, it's still going to resonate because we all have an elbow or a wrist, and it's always useful to pay more attention.
Yeah, and I think that there's some sort of quality about the space. It feels a protected space, a safe space. And I also find it interesting to that when you sort of demonstrate and you're referring to somebody else, it's interesting to hear what they're struggling with and how you address what they're struggling with. I always find that really useful, because you never know when you might struggle with something like that yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's been an interesting journey for me, to figure out how to give individual attention online to an online group, because when you're in a room, you just walk over to the person. So that's been like a really fascinating challenge and, creative challenge to, how are we going to kind of work individually in a personal way? But yeah, some which way it's come together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, how about this one, Nicki? Could you speak to a time when you were able to apply the principles of yoga off the mat in your everyday life?
Yeah, I think so. Regarding my son, that as he was recovering, I tended, and we're very similar people, my son, he's quite sensitive and feels things. And I was starting to get drawn in a lot to his trauma, to what he was portraying as the problems with the breakdown of the relationship. And I was finding that I was able, as I was getting stronger, to sort of detach myself, to actually look at it from a distance rather than get emotionally caught up in it myself. Yeah. And that really helped me to heal myself, get stronger, because I couldn't take on for him. And it was like, I think you mentioned something in class, that it's impossible to fix anybody if they've got to do the work themselves. You can give them a bit of support, but you can't do the fixing. And I really felt that. And so I was able to step back and sort of just apply. And I think it was at the same time that you were going through the yamas and the niyamas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was applying those in my own life, and trying to think, if I'm going to be able to support him further, I actually need to heal myself and be strong in myself so that I'm not a complete mess.
Profound.
And he's not, and also it was a time when he was starting to get back on his feet. He just got his degree with a lot of help, and starting to think about applying for jobs. And he's actually moved right away from us. He's 3.5 hours away from us. And we thought that he would never be independent again. He'd seemed to go back completely to being a child, totally dependent on us, to almost to the point of being a baby, feeding him, making sure he got clean clothes, that he was showering. He was really in such a bad place. So I knew that I couldn't do all of that I had to sort of step back, apply the yamas and niyamas to myself, in order to help him to see that he could do this for himself.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that's very difficult, because I don't know, as a parent, you want to try and fix things for your kids, don't you? And it was that realization that you can't.
Mm-hmm. You can
You
only
can't
take
fix
care
it
of
for
yourself.
them. Yeah, we can only take care of ourselves. And I think in taking care of myself, it's actually helped him to take care of himself. It's yeah. So real application of the yamas and niyamas in my daily life.
Wow, that's cool to hear, Nicki, because sometimes the things I put out there, like somebody might ask me something. I think it was Leanna that asked me something about yoga philosophy, and I thought, okay, well, I'll just make these random videos about the yamas and niyamas, the 8 limbs of yoga. And sometimes when I do these things, I think, who's going to listen to it? Or like, is this useful? But it's really nice to hear that helped.
Yeah. And I mean, I obviously knew about it, because you learn about it when you do teacher training, but it's something that you learn and you put to one side for a bit. I may have revisited it if I was doing a class and thought, oh, this would be useful to mention in the class. But at that time in my life, I really needed that, really needed it. So yeah.
I love that. And I think that's the magic too that's going on. Somebody did ask me something, about that. It's this interplay of all of us, asking good questions and then trying to respond, to offer what we know. And there's a lot of sharing that goes on in our group that we're all benefiting. We're all
I
benefiting.
know. And I think what I find amazing sometimes in the class is, you ask us what we want to focus on, and somebody will say something, and there's so much synchronicity.
Yeah.
Isn't there? Do you find that?
Oh, totally.
Just amazing that, like I might ask about my shoulder, and then somebody else will say about shoulders or hips or neck or something, and you think, wow, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're all benefiting. I mean, I learn every time I show up. And I was saying this to somebody else too. Like, what astonishes me is that, like, we're like 3 years into the Zoom community, online yoga community. And every day I'm excited to start the class. Like, I can't wait to open the call, which I just think, yeah, there's something really very alive that's happening.
Yeah, because I've got friends that are sort of yoga teachers. They couldn't wait for their Zoom classes to finish. Whereas, I mean, I do a Zoom class myself, and it is so enriching.
Yeah.
I find it really enriching because you're seeing people in their own homes, how they move, because people do tend to move a bit differently, I found, in a hall or somewhere outside of their own home. They move very differently in their own homes, I'm finding. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah, I think part of the bonus or benefit of Zoom is that you don't have to leave. So you're in a place that you feel safe, familiar with, and you're not distracted by everybody else. You're really honing into your own practice. And the other thing about Zoom, I think, is that it does provide consistency, like you were saying about your yoga journey. And I think everybody finds this. It's difficult to make enough contact with the practice or a teacher or a class if you have to go out there, because whether the time doesn't work or it's just, you have to travel and you don't have the time to get to that class that you want to get to, it doesn't align with your schedule. The Zoom is just easy. It's like wake up or finish your day or whatever and open your device and there you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's one of the big takes for me, is that it's the consistency of it. And that has really, really helped me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just love being able to go back. You did all those guides and that. Still revisit those guides.
Wow.
Even going back, the other day I went back to the basics, the arms and the where I've been working with the shoulder and all that, and the lower body. I still find that there's new things that I've missed. That I'm so grateful that you put those on there, because there's always something different when I go to it. So
wow. Well, that's really nice to hear, because like I said, when I make these videos, there's so many resources that I've uploaded into our site. I never know who's accessing them or how they might be benefiting people or not. So that's really nice to hear. Cool. Well, Nicki, I think you've shared so many yummy, delicious insights, and yeah. I think it's, I really appreciate who you are and your dedication to the practice. And I think, like with the story that you told of your son, I think we all struggle to dedicate time to ourselves because we think we should be doing other stuff out in the world. But what I get to watch, I think it's a real honor. What I get to watch is as people decide that they're important and they make time for themselves, the impact that they start to have on other people just by taking care of themselves is profound and more impactful than trying to fix or help other people. Like your story you know, exemplified. I think it's so important to do this kind of work for ourselves, even though we might think it's selfish or, you know, I don't know. So I admire all of you for sticking with it and just for your dedication. I think it's really commendable.
Oh, thank you. Well, you make it easy.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I just feel lucky that this is kind of what I'm called to do, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I am noticing that as I age, so I'm 62 now, that you do change. And I remember reading that there are different sort of stages in yoga, that in the early stages you're very posture based and everything, and then as you get older you do go into more of the meditation and the quieter practice. And I am noticing that for myself, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a journey. Actually, I just was ride sharing with somebody yesterday, and they asked, do you teach meditation? And I said, well, no, I think meditation is kind of a state that we might arrive to when we have enough focus, attention, and awareness. But I think what we're doing in our classes is very much preparing us for meditation, because we are learning how to go inside. We are learning how to listen, how to quiet in, how to sustain our focus. And I think naturally that leads us to this recognition or revelation that inside of us, wow, we have, you know, this place that we can drop into that is like home, or it's, you know, access to, you know, something like source energy or insight, and so once you know that's there, you know, you can't, I think that's kind of the natural evolution of a practice, which I think is what you're saying, you know, as we go along, it's like,
And I think there's something else I was going to say, was it's built trust. It's starting to build more trust in myself, because I was at that stage when things were just falling apart in the family, where it was, where do I put my trust? I was feeling very fragile physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it was very difficult to find, what can I trust? Where can I trust? And gradually the yoga has given me back that sense of trust, you know. And I can remember you saying, trust the ground underneath your feet, trust your feet. And now with these recent changes I'm feeling around my tummy, which is obviously is the solar plexus, isn't it? And that self-confident thing that is supposed to be around that area, that I'm beginning to realize that there is starting to build up a feeling of trust in there, and a feeling of an inner strength, while the surface muscles around the waist are getting softer. But there's more of a feeling inside that there is a backbone. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nicki, for doing this.
Okay.
And just for your dedication. And I guess, will we see you in a few moments?
I can't do tonight because I've got, I normally go out and meet up with a group of friends on a Tuesday. But I will definitely be with you tomorrow.
Okay. Well, we'll see you then. And I hope you have a great time with your friends.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicki.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Bye.